Ladies and gentlemen, before we resume with our regularly scheduled programming, I have an announcement about the other campaign, Hunters of Strata. That campaign is currently on hold. We don't really know. There's a bunch of scheduling conflicts and so on and so forth. So we apologize. It's paused until it isn't. We do not know when it will be resuming programming, but hopefully it will be sooner opposed to later. It will still come out on scheduled dates. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. After the murder of the obese Minotaur known as Thickwid, the group investigated his abode and learned that it was just a meeting point and by no means was his actual residence. Their next move was to pursue Lucille, who was contained in Thickwid's ejected stomach somewhere in Kithrin Lake. They headed down to the house's dock and rowed out to the meatbag's point of descent. The aquatic members of the party, Blandis and Nails, entered the clear blue water to follow their metallic assailant. As they reached a depth of 300 feet, they noticed a strange hand reaching out of a small crevice on the lake's bottom, 100 feet deeper, and they were met by amorphous blobs made of the black ichor they were far too familiar with. They posed little threat and our heroes made it out unscathed. They pressed downwards and discovered the hand had an opening in its palm. Their next move was to regroup before proceeding. As they regrouped, Janada heard a strange reptilian roar bellow from the surface. Paying little to no mind to that, they used the brewmaster's bottles to act as oxygen tanks as they dove. They swiftly entered into an airlock-style room found in the palm of the peculiar sea hand's palm. Making use of a set of levers, they drained the room's contents and ventured further into the yard. As they reached the torso chamber, the airlock behind them was opened, and a distinct thud could be heard from the opening. Water was quickly filling the structure they were currently presiding in. They hurried back to discover their compatriot Ed, who had opened the airlock in an attempt to join them. Now they had a problem. Water was flooding the system, and the flow prevented access to the lever necessary to close the airlock. Nails and Bond took the brunt of the flow, pushed through, and managed to solve their newfound problem. It was on the way back through the arm that Ed was able to identify their underwater structure as a war-forged colossus, a siege machine built to carry troops and destroy whole cities. It was this tale of these mechanical warmongers that reminded Nails of their current target and her physical makeup. He promptly casted a spell to ascertain the location of her distinct purple dress. They were now able to enter the torso chamber. It was not dissimilar to that of a warship's bridge, with a large glass pane allowing vision to the rock which had imprisoned this mechanical colossus. The room had 2 ladders in the wall opposite to the window, and the entrance to the other. Nail's spell guided them down by means of the ladder, and they followed its directions. Once below the bridge, they were greeted by 3 antique Warforged divers who sprang out of strange pods and defended their ground. The fight was well managed by the group as most closed into melee, preventing them from using their large shoulder-mounted harpoons. But their spear and short sword-mounted arms still posed threats. Bond performed practice of a specific combat move and eventually managed to master it by destroying one of them. Blandis' axe work voided the warranty of another, and Janata made an addition to one of their domes by means of crossbow bolts. After a short moment of respite, the crew descended down the next set of ladders and arrived at a storage room with another doorway away from the ladders. Also in the room lay the meat sack they had encountered earlier in the day. Blandis, in true barbarian fashion, kicked it with all his might. The sack, devoid of life and full of ebony spikes. After reeling from kicking a bag of spikes, Lucille descended upon him from above. She had been hiding, laying flat against the ceiling. Still wounded from her last encounter with them, Lucille went down fast, with Blandis Janata nails devastating the construct and splitting the crystal that sat where a head would be clean in half. After a brief inspection of the door barring progression, Janata discovered that it was magically trapped. There was some debate about how to open the door. Eventually, using chains from Lucille, Nails lassoed the door's lever and pulled it open. This did not bypass the trap, and a mauve bolt of energy passed through his skull and caused no physical harm, but wreaked havoc mentally. All that was left was to proceed through the door. It took them out of the war machine and into a perfect tunnel that led to another door of the same Warforged design. This door was clean, unlike the whole dusty and decrepit siege machine they had traveled through. Past the door was a laboratory of sorts. The room's walls were lined with crematorium-like rollers adorned with strange artifacts and relics of unknown origin. These rollers were on the higher section of the room, with the center railed off and a 5-foot staircase leading to that area from directly in front of the door. In the lower area, there was another Warforged. This one was different from the gods they had encountered earlier. He was much more ornate and operating on a gray-haired woman. The woman had 3 long black chains flowing into her skull. Her face gave way to no emotion, but tears rolled down her cheeks. The Warforged was rummaging around in her forehead with claw-like fingers. Janata, who had been made invisible thanks to a spell from Ed, ventured into the room and became aware of these 4 skittering constructs that ventured across the ceiling. Once an opportunity had presented itself, he summoned a forceful shockwave that shattered one, knocked the other 2 to the floor, one of which did not survive the fall. This began the fight. What followed was a salvo from those waiting in the doorway. Ed charged the remaining fallen construct and struck at it with his magical blade. Bond joined him at his side in the melee, while Janata had retreated back into the passageway. The last roof-riding mechanical sprung and struck Janata as he left the room. As the scuffle began, the Warforged, designated as Dr. Extractor, shaped his left arm into a kite shield and then removed the claw hand from the woman's forehead. The claws wrapping and contorted until they created a strange cylinder on his right arm. The cylinder then filled with this black energy, with red lightning coursing through its cloud. After a 2-second charging period, it discharged the energy and propelled it at Nails. He was struck square and drained within an inch of his life. Immediately after this, one of the smaller automatons closed the door, separating the group. While the door was closed, Bond finished the last of the Dr. Extractor's assistants and approached the remaining foe. Once the door was opened, he was joined by Nails, Blandis, and Ed, as Janata, using the railing as cover, flanked. The group let forth an onslaught of blows against the warborn surgeon. But using his newly shaped arm shield, he managed to dissuade most of the damage. Janata, after losing a bolt, had snatched the attention of their opponent as he once again fired his deadly laser. This time it went wide, disintegrated one of the corners of the room. The strange influx of that foul energy riddled his body, doing more damage than it should have. After a serious slog in the medical pit, the doctor was looking rough, so he made an act in desperation. The black chains removed themselves from the woman, and 2 of them began to strike at the group, while the final one wrapped itself around her throat and dragged her higher, attempting to hang her. This attempted murder was thwarted as Blandis felled the monster, and the woman fell to the ground, unconscious, but alive.